Hey there, base management is a very tricky video to make because there's many types of players watching this video. Some of you are new players, others are long-time veterans. There are those that don't mind rotating your operators a lot if you need to get bigger resources, while others don't even want a single bit of micromanagement. So I'm going to cater to every single type of players that's out there. The way that this video will work is not to tell you that certain things that you do in the game is the best things to do. Like for example, having a certain base layout, rotating your operators in a certain way. None of that. Instead, I'm going to teach you how to understand how the base works. And it's only with the understanding that you can make your own decisions as to the type of base that you want, what operators you want to use, and how often you want to actually rotate them to suit to your liking and get the resources that you want. So, without further ado, let's get started. I've got a lot of notes on my iPad. Let me just put this calculator away. We're not going to do any math. I can do math, but some of you don't even like math. So as much as possible, we're not going to calculate anything. And at the same time, we're not going to rely on spreadsheets all that much because they can be very confusing. Instead, again, we understand the concepts, then you can appreciate spreadsheets a bit more. Let's start off with the first two questions over here. I don't like the base. Can I just not do it and still get resources? You can, but I'm going to explain to you how. Or, I only log in once a day to do my dailies. Is there a not irritating way to do my base? Let's talk about these two. In a base, if you place no operators within your trading posts and your factories, these two buildings will not have any production. Everything will go on the pause and you have nothing that you can receive whenever you log in. But an interesting thing to note about the game, for every of these facilities, they all have 100% production. So trading posts can work at 100%, factory can work at 100%. If you place operators that don't have any skills or they are dead, they will basically have 100% productivity. They simply just continue working despite being tired. This could be good for people who don't really want to take care of the base. You're lazy to rotate anyone, but your base report will probably just tell you that you only have like 15,000 LMD, 18,000 EXP, which this is very little. One of the things to also note here is that the trading post and factory will not fully fill up. You won't see a situation where the capacity says stop if you log in once a day and everybody in the base is just dead operators. Then, a lot of you will have the whole idea of random bullshit go, where you don't even understand what the base is doing, so all you do is you place random operators inside. Those operators could be really good, those operators could be really bad, but you don't really know how to tell. If it's really bad, you will end up seeing somewhat of the same numbers, where things don't really improve all that much, or maybe just by a little bit. But then if you somehow manage to place operators in such that when you log in once a day, you realize you always often see certain things stop working, then in that case, your LMD and EXP amount will probably fall somewhere within this range. You'll probably get somewhere between 20,000 to 31,000, and the EXP not so far from this because the EXP is faster to fill as compared to the trading post. One thing you gotta ask yourself now is, are you happy with this amount? Or do you actually want more? And when we talk about more, how much more are we saying? Right now, we're talking about just these two usual things that people do, which is full dead, don't even switch out any operators, and people who do random bullshit go. And people who do random bullshit go could be as similar as the next two category of people, which is I'll collect before my capacity is reached. Some of you log in twice a day, 3 times a day, so you never really see a point where your factory or trading post stop working. Some of you kind of care about what you use, so you try to place things that seem very good. You read online that certain base combos should be attempted. You end up getting pretty decent. At this amount, like I said, it's somewhere between 20,000 to 31,000 and 20,000 EXP. If you happen to be at this point where you say you want to care about what you use, most likely your LMD amount could be anywhere between 30,000 to 40,000, I would say. And then your EXP amount could maybe be somewhere around 30,000. So one of the key things to understand here is that with every actions that you take as stated on the left, you might end up increasing your LMD and your EXP amount by 5,000 to 10,000. Just to help you guys identify where your base is right now, I do need to just introduce the base report. So you go to your control center, you simply click on base assistant, and then after you click on the arrow on the top here, and this will open your base report. Take an average of your EXP and your LMD, and that's generally how you are performing. So like for myself, I have an average LMD of about 65,000 and I'm supposed to have an average EXP of 30,000. Although I haven't been logging in properly, which is why the numbers are lower. if I open up a different image that I had from last month, then you can see that it's pretty much more consistent. There's a 65,000 average, and then afterwards the LMD, and then afterwards the EXP is also doing very well at 30,000. I wouldn't say that I fulfill everything that I show in the table just now. The one thing I don't really care about is the way that I rotate my operators. But if I did, I would say there might be a little bit extra in my LMD and my EXP every day. But if not, I'm very happy with where I am. But are you happy with where you are? Do look at where you stand right now in the chart and you can follow through with the video. The more actions that you take, the less both sides will increase. Like early on when you try to go from random bullshit goal to you want to care about what you use, you notice I kind of draw it as like a 10,000 increase. And then here is also another 10,000 increase. But later on, you might start to realize that you can only increase one side over the other side. But then there's also those actions that helps you to increase both sides. Basically, the goal of this video now is I'm going to teach you guys each of this very action. And each action is also something that you got to ask yourself if you want to do. Because some of you want to care about what you use, but there are those that if you can minimize rotation, maybe you'll care less about this part. Then some of you don't even want to hear any base layout arguments, so you don't want to care about this. I let you guys decide as to which actions you want to take, because it's not a matter of one action depending on the other, but rather the more that you do, the more you're increasing the output for either side. So the peak possible LMD that most people can kind of achieve is somewhere between 60,000 to 70,000, which is about 2.5 times of this particular number. And then for the EXP, it would be 40,000 to 50,000, again another 2.5 times from this number. But usually if you hit something like 70,000 LMD, then your EXP maybe will only appear about 30,000. If let's say you happen to want high EXP, 50,000 EXP, then you'll only get an LMD number of maybe 50,000. You won't see a case where both of these are at the peak. So that's the whole concept as to how this video is going to work. How do you then get more resources? Should you prioritize productivity or capacity? Productivity is how fast materials are produced, and capacity is how much materials that you can hold at a time. And these two are not unrelated, they're very much connected together. If you have a very high productivity, meaning your materials are produced much faster, then of course the capacity, what you're holding on to, will increase over time. And let's say you don't collect or log in often, then at a certain point the capacity will get so big, like the factories and trading posts, to the point where it hits the limit, then the production will be stopped. But if you happen to collect ore often, then the whole thing about capacity doesn't really matter anymore. Imagine you're someone who is permanently active on Arknights, and each time you just, for whatever reason, check in on the base. You will never need to care about capacity, because you're making sure that, hey, this is producing fast, and every day I'm getting a huge amount of resources. But of course, if you log in once a day, then the capacity will increase pretty darn quickly, and at some point it might cap. So one thing that you want to do in order to get a lot of resources as someone who log in once a day is you mix high productivity workers with capacity increases. And that way, you ensure that when you log in, you don't see a point where all your factories or your trading post stops, basically. Now, how do you get higher productivity? Productivity is a very scary concept in the game, because if you think about it, yes, log in often, you collect free resources, but the trouble is, there's a lot of combinations of operators that players keep mentioning about. People talk about Rhine Lab, Tequila, Shemeh, Bibik, Penguin Logistics, Unectus combo. There's so many others that I've not even written here. And many of you will just go, what the hell are we doing? And what is this? How do I even understand how this works? Instead of learning all these terms and hard remembering the combo, I'm going to show you guys how to understand about productivity. Over here, I've got a base that has Dorothy, Silence, and Telopsis, which is what we call the Rhine Lab combo. So the question I'm going to ask to you guys is, what's the productivity of having these three together? Some of you might end up going to read the scale. You'll be like, okay, that says plus 25, 25, and then Dorothy says plus 25, and something about a Rhine Tech type scale. You know, the moment we see very complicated scales like Dorothy, we see Rosmontes, and there's all these texts, we start to get blown out and we don't even know what it's talking about. And maybe some of you are a little bit better, so you start busting out the calculator on me and maybe calculating what the number is. Don't have to do that. Take a look at right beside the operators. Do you see this term over here that says productivity? This number, this yellow number that you see here, is basically the total productivity that this factory is experiencing. So for example, let's say I remove everybody. Notice that there is still a number here for some reason. The production is stopped, like I told you guys at the start of the video, but there's still a number here. Where's this number coming from? It's coming from my control center because I have a Calcit who adds 2% productivity to everyone that's in the factory. So let me just remove her so that you don't get confused. And then we go back in here and now we see, oh, okay, there's no productivity. It's just a 1, which means 100%. So let's say instead of adding back the Rhinelab combo, I want to make the combo a little bit worse. So let's go from Philopsis, Silence to maybe replace a Roberta. And you can then see the decrease in productivity, right? It went from that plus 90% just now to 75%. And you can test that with other things as well. Like for example, you switch this out and maybe you want a even worse one, you want Ashlock. You can see the number decrease. So instead of hard remembering the combo, or at least when you're trying to understand the combo, look at this number because this number helps you out. You can see the changes in the productivity by adding certain operators. So I'm just going to add Calcit back and then you can see the number just jump up, right? And now you don't have to struggle with understanding certain skills. So if I add Dorothy back, then you can kind of see the impact of that Rhine Tech type skill, which actually just means that for every operator who has a Rhinelab skill, they will have an additional 5%. Let's make it harder. Let's go to a different person. For example, over here. Now I'm running a Proviso comp. You don't have to understand what a Proviso comp actually means for now, but I'm just going to remove X here. And we can see that, okay, there's an order efficiency plus 7. I'm just going to remove whoever that's here that's giving it, which is Swire, so that you all don't get confused. So Proviso doesn't add any productivity at all, but she's a very, very powerful operator. You might be seeing this plus 1%. So the gray color is for every operator that you place. Like in the factory that you saw just now, there was also this little gray color one. It's plus 0.03 because it's 1, 2, and 3 operators. Okay, then for Proviso, it's just one single operator. So I've got Poziomka in the base already, and it currently writes that it's plus 15%. Where is this 15% even coming from? Let's take a look at the skill. So it says something along the line of, when this operator is assigned to the trading post, for every pure gold production line. Oh my god, what is that? For every factory producing pure gold. So for my account, I have 3 factories producing pure gold. So that kind of makes sense. 3 factory, and then it plus 5 for every factory. So yes, that's correct. That's 15%. Now, the second part of the skill says something about if you add a Durin into the base, then the trading post will get another pure gold production line. Okay, so let's try to do that. Maybe we go to... We want to test where we can place this Durin, right? So I'll take out an S-Gene and maybe I'll switch it to a Durin, the actual term itself. Or I add another person. Okay, instead, I want to test a different thing. Let's place the Durin in a factory. So I'll take out Haze and I'll switch it for Myrtle. So I place her here. She doesn't have a skill that helps the factory, but it's fine. So we can go back into our trading post and then we take a look at the order efficiency. You realize there's a plus 10% jump. So I added one Durin into the dormitory and then I added the other Durin into a factory. And you can see how this has benefited Poziomka. Now, we'll make it extra tough. Let's go for something so complicated that a lot of people struggle with. An E2 Mr. Nothing, right? E2 Mr. Nothing has a lot of skills. Now, this skill is not relevant because it helps the HR. But then the other skill says it helps the trading post. Each operator in the dormitory grants a Worldly Plight. And for every 1 point of Worldly Plight, you get an order efficiency plus 1. What the hell is it saying? So let's just place him in first. You notice how it writes plus 19%, right? Where is this 19% coming from? So this is actually coming from the dormitory. You notice how I have 5 operators, 5, 5, and then the 4 here. So let me just place one more person in to fill up the space. And then we go back into here. You realize, ooh, there's a plus 20%. Very nice for Mr. Nothing. Then there's also something about Worldly Plight. You know, you click on it and it says things like Dusk, Ling, Chongyue, Mulberry gives this. So let's try it. We go into our control center and we place in a Chongyue. So Chongyue says that he is able to add 5 Worldly Plight for every sibling that is in the base. We'll do that. Let's remove Heavy Rain, let's remove Moina, and Reed Outer. And then we're going to place Dusk. We have Chongyue, we have Dusk, and finally we will have Mian. So now I have 3 siblings in here, right? And Chongyue says that he will give 5 Worldly Plight for every sibling. So that means there's 15 Worldly Plight now. It was 20% before. Do we have a plus 15? Yes, we have a plus 15. You can see how this number changes with how you change the base. which is pretty darn good and how you can understand better about productivity. Now, do note there are two particular combos in the game that doesn't have an indicator to tell you how good they are. These two are basically Proviso and the Tequila Bibik Sheme. We will come back to these two later on, but other than that, every other combo is discoverable thanks to this particular number. There isn't any point in this video where I'm going to tell you what's the best combos for you to take. I might do that in a separate video if you guys want that. Because I've demonstrated for you guys how to understand productivity, now you can then understand the guides, the things that you see on Discord, the spreadsheets as to all those percentages that you see. You can just test those combos on your own and see whether they are to your liking or not. So anyways, we're going to move on to another concept. Now, as productivity increases, which means you get a lot more resources faster, this will mean that you probably need to log in even more. But the question at hand is there a way to tell how often to log in before you actually hit the max capacity where the production will stop? So there is a way to do so. If you go into your base, let's take a look at this combo again, the Rhinelab combo. So if you look on this screen, there isn't really a number here that tells us when we have to log in, right? It says here time remaining 60 hours, but a lot of us will know that a full Go production doesn't take 60 hours. You usually might stop production even within a day. Instead, the way to do this is you click into here. You'll notice that on the left of the screen, there is a time remaining, and it says 16 hours. This time remaining is the amount of time it takes in order to hit the maximum capacity. We can try it for another operator as well. Now remember, this productivity is quite high, right? Plus 0.9. Let's switch it to maybe a much weaker composition. So we do Roberta, Stewart, and Jessica. And this is a plus 0.7. So notice that the amount of time is increased. Now, before hitting max capacity, you need up to 18 hours. So you can also see how this is true, where productivity, if it's higher, it takes a shorter amount of time. If it's lower, it takes a longer amount of time. Now, we're going to try it with operators with morale that is very low. So for this instance, I'm going to do Mizuki, Perfumer, and Vanilla. So you notice how it actually writes here that it's 4 hours, which doesn't seem to make sense because just now it was like 16 hours for max capacity, right? So in this scenario, instead of looking at it as max capacity, because of their morale being very low, this time remaining is the amount of time it takes until they cannot work anymore because their morale hits 0. So this is also a good way to tell you when to log in. So this one is to log in terms of rotating your operators. The other one, where if we go back to the Dorothy com, this is to tell you how long you should take before you see a stop production within your account. Unfortunately, this doesn't seem to work on a trading post. So if we come to my trading post over here and we click in and we click on the operators, you see the amount of time is very long. It's 32 hours. If I go to my Proviso one, it says 8 hours here and it says 39 hours there. So 8 hours for Proviso and 39 hours for Mr. Nothing. So this particular timing instead only refers to how long the operator can work before they lose all their morale. But it doesn't tell you how long it takes to fill up all the orders. The reason why there isn't a specific number is because the orders at each time can be very different. So for example, I go in here, I use my drones, this is only 4 gold, and then afterwards I go in again, then you notice that this is spending 3 gold, right? It's a bit different. And each of these take a different amount of time. So that's why this particular number won't tell you how long it takes to cap. A general good judgment to let you know is this is the capacity of your trading post. With your desired operator combo already in the trading post, you use your drones to find out how long does it take for 3 gold order to happen. So you just spam it, you see what is the 3 gold order timing, and then you take that multiplied by the capacity. That's how long it will generally take before your trading post will cap. But if you don't want that kind of calculation, to keep it simple, just take 2 hours multiplied by the capacity, and that's how long it will take. Now, this is also where we can understand the concept of morale reduction. If let's say I switch out these 3 operators and I switch for these 3 familiar ones, a lot of you use this combo, and all of them say morale consumed per hour is minus 0.25. It's very hard to understand what this number actually means, and you do have to calculate it, but let's do it without calculations. How does this help? Let's throw them in, and then let's take a look. Notice that they can work for a wholly 80 hours because their morale drain, which is this number over here, it currently says minus 0.35, where all of them get to enjoy that minus 0.25 each. So it's with that they have that amount of time that they can work in. If you compare Gumi and then you place like a Matori Maru, you'll notice that the amount of time that Matori Maru can work is a lot less, right? This is still at 80 hours, it's self-benefiting, and then Matori Maru can only work for 43 hours. So instead of trying to understand the morale reduction number, I advise that you take a look at the time remaining. This will tell you how long the worker can actually work for. Phew, that was a lot for us to take in, and that's the entire concept of like productivity, morale reduction, how long people can work, and that is a lot of good basics for you to finally understand how the base works. But now, we're going to move on to the second territory, which is operator rotations. How will operator rotations help improve my resources? Usually, most of you will simply rotate your operators when they are dead, and then afterwards you'll refresh it for operators that have full morale. Now ask yourself, do you not want to give a damn about what you rotate because you're happy with the amount of LMD and EXP that you have? If that's you, you can probably stop the video now. You've already gone through a 20-minute journey. But if you still want even more LMD and EXP, and you want an easy way to understand how to rotate your operators, I'm gonna advise this. Take a break. For reals. It's been 20 whole minutes of this video. Take a break if you need and come back later. And now I'm gonna assume that you're ready. Let's go.